second thing we want to talk about. If the arm structure is suspended from the head, then the issue of support for the head and balance for the head is really important, very crucial to the healthy functioning of our arms and hands. Because the head supports the arms, what supports your head? It's not too complicated to figure out. It's the spine. And the spine is very long and very big and very strong. So your head is about the weight of a bowling ball. If you haven't been bowling lately, go ahead and check it out and pick up a bowling ball. 12 to 15 pounds, sometimes 10 pounds. It depends on the size of the head and the person, how much it actually weighs. But it's a pretty heavy thing, and you can see in this picture that it's really got a great system of support through the bones of the spine. Now, where is the joint where the head attaches to the spine? Right up at the top, smack in the middle of the bottom of the skull. We're going to take a look at that. It's called the AO joint, and it goes, sorry, this is one of the, there we go. It's right in the middle between front and back. So you can put one finger on your nose and one finger on the bump in the back of your head, and just kind of gently move your head up and down. See where that place is in the middle? It's also in the middle right between your ears. So if you put your fingers on the top of your jaw and the back, and you can just kind of push your head around a little bit gently. It's also way up in there. So let's actually find it. We're going to look at this place where you're right below your ear. So can you find the back side of your jaw and walk your fingers up till that indentation behind the jaw? You'll feel a real sort of dent in there. And then just put both fingers in there. And that is where that joint is. It's at the front of the spine. See if you can allow your head to just float, kind of like a bobblehead doll. There's space between the bottom of the skull and the top of the spine. A little bit of space. See if you can feel that space in there. So we want this joint to be free and movable. For flute playing, we need this joint all the time. Violinists have got to be able to move their head from that joint to drop the chin on the violin. All kinds of wind and brass players need that. What happens if we set at this joint, or we fix it and make it so it's not moving? Go ahead and do that and feel what happens to your neck muscles. Feel what happens to your arms. If there's tension up here in the AO joint with the muscles around it and the muscles in the neck, it's going to travel right down your hands, right down your arms to your hands. So let's do a little experiment. See if you can take your head off balance, maybe a little bit forward, and remembering that the head is the weight of a bowling ball. What you may not know is that for every inch that your head goes off balance, it doubles effectively the weight of the head and what the muscles have to do to support it. So get your head a little bit forward off balance and move your arms. See what that feels like, where you feel restricted, what the range of motion is. Go ahead and put your head off balance in the back a little bit, like you're sitting up really straight with military posture, and feel the same thing about moving your arms. It changes how you feel. Now, breathe. Allow your head to float back into balance right at that place between your ears, and move your arms again. See how different they feel when your neck is freer and your head, that big old head, is in balance. So now I'm going to ask you to play. So you can get your instrument. Let me tell you what I'm going to ask you to do, and then you can try playing. I'm going to ask you to play in a way that you feel like you're holding up your arms. You're putting effort into holding up your arms with your head a little bit off balance, and see if you can use your really bad habits, what you're doing when you're really looking at the music stand or you're really worried about a bad passage or something. And just notice what you can about what that feels like, how your arms feel, how your fingers feel, how your breathing feels. And then I'm going to ask you to switch and bring your head back into balance, Let that arm structure be suspended from your head and play again and see what you can notice about what your sound is like, how your arms feel, how your fingers feel, what your breathing is like. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that, and you can go ahead and do that, and I'll be back and we'll talk about that. All right, so I hope that was useful to you. Go ahead and make a note of anything that you noticed while you were playing. Just jot down a couple of things, anything that you want to remember. Okay, so now that we know that this head is supported by the spine and a little bit about how that works, the next thing we really need to know about this balance and support for the head is what part of your spine supports your head. Well, you've got three parts to your spine, and I'll use Zeke again to show you this. You've got the back part of the spine. These processes, they're what stick out and what you see in your back. It's the very edge of the spine. They are for protection and for muscle attachment. Then you have the middle of the spine, which is the nerves, where the nerves come out the sides. You can see, I'll hold them up close, you can see he's got some nerves coming out the side, and that's where the spinal cord is, in the middle. Then you've got the front, these very big, thick bones in the front of the spine. I'm going to get his arm out of the way so you can see better. Yeah. And obviously the spine is curved. You've got a big curve here, and then some curves up above and one below. But these bones in front are the ones that support your head. It's the front of the spine. So take a look at this picture, and you can see that's where the space between your belly button and the front of the spine, it's really half of the space of your torso. That spine comes in about halfway in the middle of your body. So put your hands on the side seams of your clothes and think about the fact that your spine is right there in the middle of your body, and that's what's giving you support. It's kind of like the trunk of a small tree where it's very wide at the bottom and then gets narrow at the top and is very movable and flexible. So see if you can sit in such a way, let go of your back muscles, and allow the thought of that spine supporting you through the middle of your body and letting your head just balance on top of it. So of course the next question is, what supports the spine? Well, it's your legs and your sit bones. The spine comes down, attaches to the sacrum there in the middle of the pelvis, and the weight is distributed going through the sides of the pelvis. If you're standing, it goes into the legs. If you're sitting, it goes right into the sit bone. So you can see the sit bones are lower than your hip joints. That's what you're sitting on right now, if you are sitting, unless you're at one of those standing treadmill desks. And it's very clear when you look at this picture that the weight of the head is supported all the way from the feet, straight through that spine and the ankles, the knees, the hip joints, the lumbar spine. So we want to think about, see if you can feel your sit bones. Put your hand, sit on your hand. Don't do this if your hand hurts or you have hand problems, but if you can, just sit on your hand and feel where that sit bone is. It's quite big and quite heavy. So thinking about that for a moment, how the spine is connected to the head, and it's the front part of the spine that supports you. Just jot down anything that you want to remember from that. So how does this work in relation to your arms? Well, the way we sit at the sit bones has a huge effect on how the head and the neck and the arm structure works. We want to have balance of this whole structure over the sit bones. We want it to be supported. So the first picture is somebody who is sitting in what we call good posture, sort of military posture, chest up, shoulders back and down, arching the back a little bit. And you can see that that bowling ball of a head is no longer supported by the spine or the sit bones, but it's directly over the lower back. If you have lower back pain, this is something that may be causing it. It could be that you are using your back muscles to hold up that head. You've got a little arch in the back, more than you need, and all of that is overworking. Because really, if you look at the structure of the back muscles, there's very little muscle in the lower back. It's mostly connective tissue. We don't have the same kind of muscles that we have higher up in the back. Now, there's that ouch place right there. Here's what happens when we're sitting at the computer or whatever it is that we're doing. We get this forward push of the head, or when we're playing, we're trying to look at the music. When the head starts to go forward, and I don't care if it's a quarter inch, a half inch, a whole inch, or a couple of inches, those neck muscles right in the back of the spine there, in the back of the neck, are going to start to scream bloody murder because they're being asked to hold up the head, and that is not their job. Their job is to move the head, but not to hold it up and keep it from falling forward. So, unfortunately, in our time, we end up doing a lot of activities that bring us into this forward position, whether it's texting or working at the computer or doing dishes or brushing our teeth or pushing a vacuum or whatever it is that we're doing. We end up doing a whole lot of activities that bring us in this forward position. It's not always just the instrument that's causing problems for us. We need to be able to use our bodies in a way that allows openness and full body structure to support what we're doing. So let's take a look at what balance looks like. This is your head being supported by the core spine. And you can see coming right up through the sit bones, the front of the spine, and right to that AO joint. Beautiful balance. So let's try that. You can, again, if it's comfortable for you, sit on one of your hands and feel the sit bone. Now, when you sit up too straight, arch your back a little bit. Don't do this if your lower back hurts. Go into military posture. You can feel that your sit bone kind of goes back in space, back towards the back of the chair. And now you're sitting on your leg muscles. Well, see what happens when you roll through that and you go into a little bit of a slump, a texting position, I guess we would call it. And that puts you in that forward position. Your sit bone is now curving forward. It's moved forward towards the front of the chair. And you're sitting actually more on your tailbone, which is not so good for your tailbone because that's not designed to bear weight. So let's do that again. See if you can make that rotation from sitting up too straight into a slump. Do it a couple of times and notice the place in the middle where you feel the most weight going into your sit bone. There's a place where you'll really feel the weight of your torso going directly into the sit bone, and then just take your hand out and allow your head to be balanced over the sit bones. This is called balance. Now, if you're not used to sitting that way, if you're used to doing a little bit of an arch, it's going to feel like you're kind of slumped forward. But really, if you can just check and see what it feels like, how's your breathing, does it feel easy, balanced, supported, it's a pretty good place to be. It's not something that we hold or get stiff in, but it gives you the most room for your arms to move. So let's add the arm movement to this. Go ahead and sit a little too straight and feel what it's like to move your arms. Range of motion is a little bit limited. Go into a little bit of a slump. Feel the limitation in your arm movement, and then breathe. Float up out of that and go into this nice, easy balance from the head to the sit bones. Then move your arms and see how they feel. This is the core support, but it's the core of what we need for our arms. We need that balance through the whole body in order for these neck muscles to be free and the arms to be movable and free. So we've looked a lot at the internal structure of the bones, but I want to touch a little bit on the muscles that connect your arms and your legs, because these are really important muscles. There are two that I really want you to think about. The first one is the latissimus. Now, this is a muscle that goes from the inside of your arm. You can find right up in here, and then it wraps around, goes right to your tailbone. So I'll show you with Zeke. Goes from the inside of his arm, it wraps around the ribs, right around the ribs, and goes all the way down to the tailbone. That's a huge, huge muscle. They call it the lat, short for latissimus. And it's one of the main muscles that pulls your arm down. So thinking about the fact that you have a connection and support for your arms all the way to the tailbone, and then that overlaps with the glutes and the leg muscles and supports you all the way from down there. Guess what happens to that muscle if you're sitting a little bit too arched in your back and you're trying to do a good position like you were taught to do in band or orchestra? Sit up straight. You know, when the conductor raises his or her arms, everybody goes, sits up straight. When the conductor drops the arms, everybody goes, oh, because they're so tired of sitting up straight. Let's keep those lat muscles free and movable and strong. You want them to be strong, but you don't want them to be tight when you're playing. The second muscle that's really important is this trapezius, and you can see there that it's in the shape of a trapezoid. You can see the fact that the fibers go crosswise means that it's going to tighten crosswise, and then they go on a diagonal down at the bottom. It's going to tighten and pull in there. So again, when we tighten our shoulders or put too much effort into our necks, that is going to tighten and it all the way down to the middle of the back and overlap with the latissimus and then make a connection to your whole body. So it's another reason why we want just that space and openness and freedom of those muscles so that we can get a good connection with the legs. I love this picture. These are some beautiful women carrying some incredible loads on their heads. Let's imagine that maybe figs or water are in those jugs, maybe another 20 pounds on their heads on top of an already heavy head. Does it look like they are working hard to carry that up? It really doesn't. And look at two of them aren't even using their hands to steady the jug. And they're walking on sand on a very uneven surface. What does it take to have that kind of poise, that kind of balance? That's the way we want to feel when we're playing our instrument. So that we've got, you can almost see it right through them, that inner core support right up through the spine, through the head, all the way up to the jug. You better believe that their neck muscles are not tight. They're not working to hold those jugs up. They've just got this incredible balance that goes all the way down to the sand. I love this picture. I'd like to have it on a wall someplace. So just for yourself for a minute, see if you can get a little bit of an idea of what that inner core buoyant support feels like. Imagine that there's this force of buoyancy coming up through the front of your spine, and just move your arms with that and feel how glorious that feels to be able to move with support of your spine. Do it sitting. Let's try it standing. We've been sitting quite a lot already. So I'm going to move my chair back and tilt my screen up a little bit. Whoops. And just get a sense of how you can let the ground hold you up. So you're standing on the ground. You feel the ground on the whole soles of your feet. You feel your arches, your ankles, your knees, your hip joints, and that nice feeling of support right up through the front of your body. Now I want to show you a couple of warm-ups you can do with your arms. I'm going to send you a handout of these tomorrow. And I'm going to do them in slow motion because otherwise it'll be really blurry. But these are things you can do with your students or by yourself before you practice or while you're practicing. Take a break, do it at the end. The first one is just to do those shoulder rolls. And notice this mapping idea that when you move your shoulders, you're moving your hands, the whole structure. You can go forward, you can go back, you can go up to your ears, you can go down, just move them all around. Then try a little twist from the ankles. You just turn your body from the ankles and let your arms move, swing out kind of like a helicopter or one of those circus rides with the swings that go around a pole in the middle. And just feel how your arms are moving around that core. This is great for helping people understand that the arms come from the center. Then imagine if you could rollerblade, what that would be like, how you would be moving your arms opposite. And I'm not going to do this fast because I don't want it to be blurry, but you can go ahead and swing at whatever speed is comfortable for you. And feel how your feet are moving, your hips, knees, and ankles. Try it with your knees and your hips locked and see how that changes the feeling of movement in your arms. You haven't got anywhere near the force or the support or the freedom that you get. So this is a great way of remembering that your arms are connected to your feet. You can also pretend like you're getting ready to go on a ski jump. You do these nice and vigorously. If it doesn't hurt you, if you don't have shoulder injuries, you can really get some physical warm-up, some breathing warm-up. We can also just kind of lean over and dangle one arm. Actually let your arm hang, put one hand on your knee, let the other arm just dangle and kind of swing it around and see if you can feel where that arm joins in to the shoulder blade, how that moves. Then let's do some chicken flaps. I like to do these to help people figure out that they don't have to raise their shoulders to raise their arms. We're not doing this. We're doing just this and finding where that joint is under here. Yeah, good. And we can do some stretching in the back. It's really good to do a lot of stretches that open this up lying on a foam roller or stretching off the end of your bed or back over a ball, something like that. Because we spend, as I said, we spend a lot of time in this forward position. So those are some things that you can do for fun to help engage your arms. Now let's get your instrument, and I'm going to invite you to play again. Let me tell you again what I'm going to invite you to do, and then I'll give you a minute to try it. Let me pull my chair up. You can play standing or sitting, it doesn't matter to me, just whichever you prefer. And see if you can play with a sense of that inner core support for your head and arms. Don't play anything too hard, because when we get into the hard stuff, we're going to start to do too much work. Play something nice and easy, Twinkle Star, I don't know, a folk tune that you love, Happy Birthday, whatever is easy and fun for you. And see if you can notice how your breathing feels, how your tone is, what the sound is like. Notice what your technical facility is. You might try a very easy scale very fast and see how your fingers feel when you've got this lovely inner core support. You've got your head balanced and supported. You've got your arm structure just drifting off of that head. Okay, go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to give you a minute and then we'll be back and talk about it. Okay, so let's find out. We talked about the connection of the spine to the lower body, how you've got that connection through the pelvis. So right through here, through the pelvis to the sit bones or the hip joints, and all the way through to the legs. The importance of getting support from the ground. Now, I'm convinced that a lot of our upper body problems come from the fact that we really don't talk about the lower body in our pedagogy. Almost every aspect of our pedagogy, unless maybe you're a taiko drummer, is pretty much from the waist up. We talk about fingers, we talk about bow strokes, we talk about embouchure, we talk about breathing, but we almost never talk about legs. And what happens when we over-focus on this is that we start to lose that connection to the ground. We lose the connection through the spine, to the legs, to the feet, and the ground that is actually holding us up. And so part of what we need to do when we feel that there's pain or discomfort up here is to learn to let go of this, but increase the sense of support. So if you're doing something like, well, on the flute, it would be playing into a high register, doing something that requires more effort, more work. It's a lot easier if you do that thinking about the movement coming from the ground. Let's say you want to do some really strong bow strokes on the violin. Feeling the bow against the violin in relation to the ground gives you a much better sense of support and connection than if you're just thinking of the arms and the violin. For the piano, if you want to increase your range or you want to do some really strong chords, getting that leverage from your feet, all the way from your feet up your body. How many feet is that anyways? From your feet to your hands, that's probably a good 6 to 9 feet of leverage that you've got before you start even moving your fingers. So it's a really important part and something that I think we don't think about very often. How can we help our arms and hands by allowing the rest of our body to be part of the picture? So jot down anything that's useful to you about what you found out when you were playing, anything about the spine, anything you want.